Hey guys, Jordan here. In this video, I'm going to set up the menus in my DJI Air2S to how I like it so that you can see how I set it up, as well as become familiar with the menu system of the Air 2 if you're in the market for one. So let's get into it. All right, so we have the screen here, and this is just going to be one continuous so you guys can kind of follow along. All right, so first off, let me reset all the settings. So let me go down to the bottom. I don't want to repair, sorry, camera settings. I'm gonna reset them to factory. Let me see, transmission, that's all gonna stay the same. And then safety, I think you can reset safety, maybe not. Anyways, most of the settings I don't really mess with too much. There's just a few things that you'll definitely need to change to get high quality real estate photos. First off, this is at a 0 exposure value. So if you're shooting a picture like this, obviously it's exposing more for the plant than the sky. I would rather have the sky, have detail in the sky. You can see how it's kind of blown out. But that just kind of bothers me. Let me go down to -1 EV. Now I can see all the detail in the sky, and I'll be able to bring up the shadows. But anyways, this video is about the settings. So 4K 30 is good. You can do 4K 60 with this drone, or even 5.4K. I will say on this drone, it does limit some functionality, some features that you can and cannot use if you're shooting higher than 4K 30. So I think when I'm out at a property, a lot of times I do shoot the 4K 30. One thing that I really like is this zoom feature right here. You can just zoom in. I believe 1x and 2x are the most usable in 4K, as 4x is like too grainy. So let's go ahead and hit on these top 3 buttons right here. Now, if you're an experienced drone pilot, you can turn off your obstacle avoidance. I usually don't recommend this because obviously you're going to be hitting more things if you're not cautious. I think brake is default. I don't know if you can do bypass, but anyways, this is where you can turn off the obstacle avoidance if you want. Whoop, max altitude, we want that set to right below 400 feet. We don't want to be out of compliance. So I usually don't mess with the altitude settings. There we go. You can update a home point. You can calibrate your compass here. Also the IMU you can calibrate. You can check out your battery information here. Kind of look at the health of those as well. There will be times where you might have a sensor error or something. You will have to come in here and calibrate. LEDs, you can turn them on or not. Auxiliary light. And I think with this drone you can actually pick colors, if I'm not mistaken. Unlock geo. There is no so if you're flying in a specific zone, you may need to unlock a zone to be able to fly. Aeroscope, find my drone, so you can find your drone if you lost it here. I've never had to use that, thankfully. And then there's also advanced safety systems, or safety settings. What do you want it to do if signal is lost? I do leave that on return to home because that's what I want to do. And then emergency propeller stop. Air sense, when enabled, DJI Fly will notify users if there are manned aircrafts nearby in the airspace. We can enable that. So that's just good information to know while you're out flying. Units, I'm here in the United States, so I keep it on Imperial. Subject scanning, when enabled, aircraft automatically scans and displays subject. I don't usually have that turned on. Gimbal mode, I leave to follow mode. That's the default. By default, allow upward gimbal rotation is turned off, and what that does is it'll limit. There's a nice little bird outside. It won't allow you to move your gimbal. Sorry, I'm moving the wrong one. All right, see, I can move my gimbal down, but it stops at 0 degrees. Now with that turned on, it'll allow you to shoot upwards. So if you're low next to water and you want to get a shot pointing up at a house, that's a good tool. But typically speaking, you know, you don't use that feature too much. So if you wow, it does go up pretty good. All right, so let's move on to the next advanced. So they have a advanced gimbal settings if you want to go in there. Gimbal calibration, you have to do that. Sometimes you can recenter. There's also buttons on your controller, depending on how you have them programmed, that will automatically move your gimbal down and whatnot. All right. So those are the control. Usually it's pretty, I like to keep things pretty default. So if so that when I pick up a new drone, it's already set up. I don't have to change too many settings. All right, so in camera, if you're flying during the day, here, I'll start at the top. I do like format, MP4, color for video, HLG. You can see how it just gets a little bit more dynamic range. It's a hybrid log gamma video format. I do like that. I leave it at H265 auto flicker on auto. HLG, looks a little bit more cinematic. Normal is, you can just tell it's a little less dynamic range and the colors are a little bit more vibrant. I'm not a huge fan of D-Log. It's like very desaturated and you can grade it more. I think HLG is a little bit more usable out of camera to get the more cinematic look. Video subtitles, you can have that on. I don't know when I would use it if you're a real estate photographer. Histogram, if you like looking at your histogram while you're flying, you can check that on here. Overexposure warning. I usually have a good eye for what kind of shot I'm wanting to get without having to look at the histogram or have the overexposure warning. So I usually have those turned off. There are times where I do have them on, but mostly off. Peak level, I think this is by default off. I like to have it on high, so then when you're over here, you tap the AF button, it goes into a manual mode. This is when you want to manually focus your camera so you can see how close it focuses, and it works much like the Sony cameras where it's nice and red and just shows you what's in focus. But for the most part, autofocus works well for the Sony. So scrolling all the way down goes back to autofocus. All right. Now you can have different grids if you like using those. Maybe when shooting photos, it might be useful to use the rule of thirds or this one or this one. You can actually have them all turned on if you want, or you can just select a certain one. I don't fly with them on currently. Now, low light video, I would recommend using manual white balance or video in general. But during the day, I say that this DJI does a pretty good job selecting an appropriate white balance. So, but if you see that it's off, maybe it's a cloudy day or bad weather, you can just go in here and adjust your white balance manually. So you can go, let's see, 2000 Kelvin all the way up to 10,000 Kelvin. I think it was at 56. So if you want it warmer or cooler, you can adjust it there. Now you can format your internal or SD card. All right, transmission. Definition, I usually leave it HD, dual band, auto, and I haven't really had any issues with that. Now, if you're using the smart controller like I use, you want to make sure you check for updates before you leave, as well for your drone and your controller. Just because it's more of a pain when you're out there, you kind of have to tether to your cell phone service if you're gonna use this controller. All right, so for, like I said, 4K 30 is usually what I use. Now for low light with this particular drone, I'll switch it to 5.4K 24 frames per second low light, and then I'll also adjust settings manually. So here they have it, they call it auto or pro. So if you switch it to pro, you can tap on different settings. You can adjust exposure value, ISO, shutter, white balance, resolution, and frames per second, storage, stuff like that. Makes it really easy. But during the day, auto does give pretty good results. All right, now what else? All right, let's go over here. Now, right now it's on video normal. You can do slow motion video with this drone. What do you have? 1080, 120. We like shooting in 4K, so I'm usually not messing around with the slow motion too much. If I wanted to do slow motion, I'd put it in a higher frame rate over here. I would do 4K 60 if I needed it. Or I think you can do 1080 even higher. Nope, 1080 60 as well. So 4K 60, low light 5.4K 24 frames. The 5.4K on this drone is significantly better than the 4K. And it's really noticeable when it's in low light scenarios. All right, so let's switch it to photo. Now, I like taking photos single exposure. You might want to try the Smart, the AEB mode, or burst and time shots you usually won't use, but you can use the brackets and have it shoot multiple shots. You know, during the day, you're not needing too much dynamic range if you have a good shot at 0. Just if it's overexposed or underexposed, you want to make sure to adjust your exposure value. If you don't do that, bracket shots might be worth it. I've messed around with Smart, but I don't use it. The biggest thing that you want to do is switch your file format to JPEG plus RAW. They don't have a RAW only, they have JPEG and RAW, so you want to make sure that you're shooting RAW, because then you'll be able to adjust white balance in post-production, as well as have a lot more data in your shadows and your highlights, which is very important to or in real estate. And during the day, you know, I'm usually not too concerned about shadows. I do like to make sure that the exposure value is a good crisp image, that there is data throughout the image. And if you want to be certain of it, I would do the overexposure warning. So then you can see the little zebras. Those are clouds and those are little things. So, you know, if you want to get rid of everything, you can make it really dark. But that's too dark in my opinion. Usually -1 or 2, depending on what the scenario is, will work well. Flight modes. So if you switch, so P is the default mode. On my controller it says tripod mode, but it's the Cine Smooth mode. This is a good mode for shooting real estate video where you just want nice subtle movements. It's not as aggressive as normal, and sport mode is super aggressive. I usually don't recommend sport mode when you're doing close-up shots on like a house. Usually I'll use sport mode to move from shot to shot when I'm doing photos, or even a video if I'm trying to cover a lot of distance and do a hyperlapse or something like that. All right, so they also have master shots, which you can enable it unless you're off the ground, which is pretty incredible. I'll probably make a video on this alone, but the master shots I did on my last shoot, and it produced some pretty good results. I actually ended up using some of the clips that the drone created itself with that master shots option. And then let's see what else we have. You have quick shots, so these are like actually you can't do it. They have different like droney, they have different modes where they can circle or helix. Hyperlapse, I don't think you can enable that until you're off the ground as well. Actually, you can set the parameters. Hyperlapse is pretty cool. If you're doing a high-end video, it's a nice feature. It's definitely adds some character to your video by shooting hyperlapse. And then panoramic, don't you really use that too much, but what I like to use is waypoints for hyperlapse. I'm trying to think if there's anything else specific on this. So that's pretty much the menu system in a nutshell. It's pretty straightforward. They've definitely gotten a lot better over the years. And this video specific is to the Air2S. I'll put out additional videos on other menu systems for other drones that are good for real estate. And anyways, that's going to do it for this video. If you're interested in learning more about real estate media, feel free to check out our free 1-hour training where I go over our top 10 secrets on how I created a 7-figure real estate media business. I'll also take you on a few short job shadows so that you can see what it's like shooting real estate media firsthand. The link's in the description. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you got value out of it. And we'll see you guys on the next one.